All right, good afternoon. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes to see if we can get anyone else into the room, and then we will go ahead and get started. I know for those of you that have been on Temple SBDC webinars in the past, we normally do webinar presentations. This one was set up as a meeting for the smaller group, and hopefully that'll give you the opportunity to unmute yourself if you're interested in ask questions, or you are more than welcome to just utilize the Q&A. But like I said, let me just give it one more minute here, and then we will go ahead and get started. We have a ton of topics to cover today. Obviously, the world of international is huge. Okay. All right, it's 12:03, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. Hopefully anyone that's just straggling in will miss a little bit of my introduction. But this is the International E-Commerce Expanding Your Markets Online webinar at Temple SBDC. I have taught this webinar quite a few times to small businesses, resource partners, other SBDC staff alike. And the one thing I can say is while it's informative, there's a lot going on in the international e-commerce space. So it is only an hour-long session. I'm going to try to run through everything and give it the amount of time that it requires, but still make sure we have some time for Q&A as well. So with that in mind, I'm just going to get us jumped right in here to the PowerPoint. If you have questions throughout, you are more than welcome to put them in the chat. I will be looking at the chat over here on the side of my screen. If you have any questions, I'll get to them as is appropriate. And there are a couple times throughout the presentation where I'll pause in between topics. And at that point, because this is set up as a meeting, you are more than welcome to also unmute yourself if you would like to, or you can just utilize the Q&A. It's completely up to you. All right. So for those of you that are new to the Temple SBDC, welcome. I'm looking at the faces here on the screen. It seems like a lot of you have attended these sessions before. But just to reiterate, the Temple SBDC is part of a nationally accredited network of small business development centers. There are actually over 1,000 SBDCs in the United States, and there are 16 in Pennsylvania. We are located in the Philadelphia region and located obviously at Temple University. We offer a variety of resources like one-on-one consulting, business educational program, resource sharing, and webinars like the one you are on today. If you have any follow-up questions after the webinar and they are not answered in the Q&A, you are more than welcome to also sign up with an SBDC consultant at no cost to you to go over next steps. We do have 3 international business experts in our office that are more than happy to get you started on the international e-commerce journey. So with that said, just a little bit about myself. My name is Sarah Mailloux. I am our Digital Transformation Program Manager here at Temple SBDC. What that means is I run a ton of programming. Every once in a while, you'll see me presenting. You might see me moderating, but I'm always in the background putting on the webinars that we have to make sure that small businesses get digital literacy education that can help them grow and succeed in this digitalized post-pandemic world that we are living in. Prior to working at Temple SBDC, I actually worked at the Delaware SBDC. So like I said, it's a national network. So there's an SBDC or multiple SBDCs in every single state. I also have a ton of wealth management and business reporting experience from a prior life, but I do have marketing and event management in my background, which is why I'm here today as the Digital Transformation Program Manager. And like you, I am an entrepreneur. I actually do academic coaching and instructional design for a couple different universities and marketing for nonprofits within the Delaware region. I have a bachelor's and master's in international business, which is why I'm talking about international e-commerce with you all. I am also an export certified advisor. I was given that certification by the SBA. And for any of you that are in the technology space, I'm Ideation and Commercialization certified. So with that said, you are more than welcome to reach out to me with any questions about international business, digital services, anything to do with our Center of Excellence, which is matched with my badge up here, over here, any of our training programs or the marketing that we're putting together. So this is our quick agenda for today. Like I said, I want to be able to dive right in here, but if you have questions, please do put them in the chat. So we're going to talk really briefly about why you would even want to go international. I'm thinking most of you on the call here probably realize that going international is a great way to grow and expand your business. We're going to delve into the why of that very quickly. We're going to talk about what it means to do international marketing, what it means to have an international website, cybersecurity, which is a topic nobody really loves to talk about, but it's definitely important, especially if you're going international. And then where to start, right? So I'm thinking most of you on the call here today might be thinking, this is great. There's a lot of content here. What can I do as my next step? So that's what I want to be able to provide for you. And then show you some other commercial, U.S. commercial services and STEP, which are other resources in the community that can help you for free, help you with your international endeavors. So we're just going to get in here. Why and how of international business, like I said. So is international business possible for me? I feel like a lot of small businesses come into the realm of international, which can seem really big and really scary. And you have already taken the first step. There are many small businesses that don't even sign up for a webinar like today, or don't even talk to an advisor or talk to someone and say, you know what, I want to go international. A lot of small businesses start way before then because they don't think it's possible for them. They think they're too small, it might cost too much money, that the cross-border selling is too complicated. And I want to come here today to tell you that yes, actually international business is possible for you as a small business. 20 years ago, it was a bit of a different story. International selling seemed only possible for really large corporations with multi-million-dollar budgets and locations in all of these different countries. And today, due to the digitalization of our world, that's just not the case. Global e-commerce sales are over 2.5 trillion worldwide, and it's definitely worthwhile for you to get involved in that space if you're comfortable with it. There's tons of opportunity here to grow, but it's not just in terms of growth, it's in terms of business stability, business resiliency, and there's just so much more, and we're going to touch on all of that in a second here. So it is possible, but why would you want to do it? That's the next question, right? So here are just some of my favorite reasons for going international. One is it helps you stay competitive in the marketplace. So I kind of alluded to this before. It's really important from a competition standpoint to be able to say you market internationally, because you're going to get into markets that other people are not. Like I said, there are many United States small businesses that don't even try going international. They're already losing out on the competition in that marketplace by not even being there. You have a unique opportunity, even if you're going to start small, like shipping to Canada or Mexico or a country close by, to differentiate yourself. You can differentiate the way you market, what's on your website, and it also just creates legitimacy for your business. So people will see that you're an international your business is willing to ship internationally, or that you are now an international recognized business, and it adds some legitimacy to what you're selling as well. Another thing is you can expand your market reach. So that kind of goes right in hand with the staying competitive, right? Expanding your market reach is key, especially as we've all seen in the past 2 years when there is uncertainty in the economy. So obviously a worldwide pandemic affects the entire world. COVID was really an outlier into that effect. But let's say the United States economy was on a downturn, but the European Union's economy was on an upturn and people were willing to spend more in the EU. You can expand your market reach, and it actually helps you be more resilient in the long run, because you can still sell your product somewhere and not have a dip in sales potentially. So there's a ton of market reach available to you in that space. You can explore these untapped markets with the internet. So why should you sell abroad? Because it's easier now than it ever has been before. There's so many markets that you can get to now that you couldn't have earlier, just because you can now get online, have a website, people can view you from anywhere in the world. And the next step is obviously going to be shipping the products to them if you are a product-based business. But you can already reach people so much easier. You don't need to sell a catalog or have a location in every country you're trying to sell to. So that is a huge lift. It makes it easier for a small business to go international with limited funds. You benefit from something called economies of scale. That is a business term, and I'm not going to assume that everyone knows what economies of scale is. But basically what that means is the more you sell of something, the cheaper it actually is for you as a business to sell it. And it's cheaper when you sell abroad as well. So if you're selling, buying in bulk, if you're selling, let's say 100 items all to Canada, it's cheaper than selling well, it's going to be cheaper per unit. Let me say that, cheaper per unit to sell than selling just 10 items over to Canada all at the same time, because the logistics companies, the supply chain, everyone involved in that is going to reduce the price based on bulk items. As you've probably experienced, any of you that have bought any kind of manufacturing or product from abroad in bulk, you know, the idea of economies of scale is bulk. So the more you're selling, the cheaper it is per unit actually for you as a business. And you can benefit even more from economies of scale if you have a larger market. And the best way to have a larger market is to go through the United States and beyond. And of course, it's an opportunity for growth for you professionally, but also for your business. The United States market is limited. Depending on how far you want to grow, international is a great way to get there. So with that said, why should you sell abroad? This is probably some of the things you've already thought about, but we're going to take a look next at some other key considerations, like how to sell abroad. So you know it's possible, you know why you might be interested, but the next step that a lot of small businesses stumble with is, how do I sell abroad then? This sounds like a really daunting task for many people. The simple answer, because we are in such a digital world, is get your product online. No one international is going to find you unless you're online. But if only it were that simple. There are tons of ways to get your product online, which makes it very easy to sell abroad. But as you can see from this list on the right here, there's a ton of options to do so. You can make your own website and ship from the United States yourself. You can sell your products on an international marketplace like Amazon or eBay. Even if you're selling on your own website, you might be shipping internationally through a third-party service like UPS. You can drop ship your items internationally. You can partner with an overseas company, and then they'll stock all your products and ship them out for you, and you get a percentage of the sales. One of the things that you can easily do is support international payment methods, so people can at least pay for your products in their foreign currencies. You can offer local customer service, so having someone on site in that country to help clients if they came in person, and localizing your site, right? So making the way your website looks for your customers in Italy look a little different from the way your website looks for customers in the United States, because they might be looking for different things or be interested in different items. So these are just a couple of the ways that people make themselves internationalized in their online presence. What I would say is probably the most popular are having your own website and working out the logistics and getting on an international marketplace. We're going to go over both of those today. And while this is like, I'm letting you know that these are available to you. If you want more information on your website specifically, we have website classes on how to build a website. If you're looking for how to get on a third-party platform, more specifically like Etsy or Amazon or Alibaba, we have webinars for that. I'm putting that out there now because each of those subjects in itself can take over an hour, but I'm just letting you know here, if you're interested, or maybe you already have a website, or maybe you're already on Amazon or any of these places, it makes it easy for you to go abroad. It's already built in. That's one of the ways people are going abroad. A small business can go abroad in that way. So get your products online, but then you get to pick and choose how your products online will actually go abroad to your customers. All right, here we go. So, intro to international marketing. I'm just going to pause for a half second here. If anyone had any questions just on that preliminary, I know most of that was probably things you're already thinking, is it possible, why and how, but we're going to get into the nitty gritty of how you're actually going to get through this, especially in terms of marketing. Like I said, we're going to go over marketing, web design, cybersecurity, and then the first steps that you should consider. So does anyone have a question at this point in time? All right, great. So we're just going to keep on rolling here because, like I said, we do have limited time. It's already 12:15, so I want to be conscious that we get through everything. When you're doing international marketing, you have to have a lot more consideration to e-commerce factors and non-e-commerce factors than you might have in a national headspace. What do I mean by this? For those of you that are familiar with marketing, let's say you market nationally right now, or you're just marketing to people in Pennsylvania or just in your local community, you're probably marketing in a very particular way without even realizing it. You're taking advantage of the social boundaries, of the environmental boundaries, of what you're allowed to and not allowed to say from a legal perspective on social media or on your website. You might be running special sales because of holidays. You might have sales because of the economy in the United States, or you might be pricing your products lower because all of your competitors are pricing products lower because of the economy, et cetera, et cetera. And you might not even notice you're taking advantage of all of these different factors when you're doing your marketing currently. But you have to consciously do so when you're marketing internationally. There are a ton of aspects of going online, international, that you need to consider. And unfortunately, it's going to change based on each country you go into. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about in a slide or two is market research. I highly empower each of you to go out and do some research. I'm not saying you have to spend hours upon hours researching every country, but let's say you're jumping into international trade and you want to start with the United Kingdom, for example. I encourage you to do some research on the UK, figure out what their market looks like. How are they doing economically right now? What's the politics look like? Is there any political tension between the UK and the United States, for example? Because these are all going to play into how you get your product to those clients in that country. Here are a couple of examples. Political is huge. If there is a country that has political tension with the United States, what can that mean for you as a small business? It means that if there ends up being a tariff, or there's some other tax imposed, it might become too expensive for you to sell products abroad to that other country. And you might have already promised people you would sell them products. So it's always good to just kind of realize what's going on in that political landscape, or if the country you're trying to sell to has political unrest, and all of a sudden their postage service that is, paid for by the government isn't running, or the packages are getting lost. And every time a package is lost, you might have to resend a package and remake something and send it to the client again. That is affecting you as a business owner because you have to take extra time out of your day or extra money to worry about these items. So really do some research on what the political landscape is in the country you're trying to enter. Same thing with the economy. Not every country's economy is doing well at the same time or doing bad at the same time. I talked about that a little bit earlier with resiliency, right? For example, maybe in the winter selling flip-flops in Connecticut and Pennsylvania, you won't get, let's say you're a flip-flop store, all you sell is flip-flops. You might not get a lot of traction if you're selling in Pennsylvania only in the winter. You might not get a lot of flip-flop sales. You might say, I want to also sell to Florida. You could also say, I want to sell to Australia, or I want to sell to a different part of the world where it is warm right now. And you can, balance out your sales in that way. But also from an economic standpoint, you have to consider pricing and what people are willing to pay for items in that country. So if an economy is lower, the rate of pay for things is lower than the United States, people might not be willing to spend $10 or $12 for a hairbrush like they would in the US. They might only be able to spend $4, $5, $6 on a hairbrush, so do some research on what things actually cost in the country you're going into as well, so you have a realistic expectation of what you're pricing your items at. Otherwise, people probably won't buy them. From a technical perspective, you want to be aware of technology, obviously. Are people able to get online and find you? You can market all you want, but if you're marketing to, let's say, Myanmar, for example, and the people you're trying to reach either only access the internet once a day or can only access internet from their phone or whatever it is, that's going to affect the way you're trying to sell your product. You might want to make sure your website is very mobile friendly. You'll want to make sure you have a way for people to connect with you and contact you if they have questions about your business. So from a technical perspective, are the clients you're trying to reach able to also reach you? From a legal perspective, you want to make sure that you're following regulations of customs, regulations of the different countries that you're entering into, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the presentation. But those are, some factors that people don't realize when you're going international. And even as a small business doing business nationally, how when you're selling business and you're selling your product in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia specifically, and you might have to make sure you're accounting for the sales tax and things like that. Other countries have their similar stipulations, and you just want to make sure you're aware of what that means for you as a business. Next, I have environmental, and a lot of people think the word environmental and think they're thinking, oh, okay, Sarah means make sure my packaging is eco-friendly or something like that. And that's not really what I mean here. I mean, Don't get me wrong, if you want to be eco-friendly, that's a huge lift in a lot of, especially European countries, they're looking for that kind of product. But what I'm talking about here is natural disasters and how the environment is affected, right? So back to that flip-flop example, the environment of New England is that it's hot some parts of the year and cold parts of the year. The environment of Florida is that it's hot all times of the year. So that might be a market that is viable for flip-flops. Similarly, let's say you were selling all of your flip-flops to Florida, but they had a hurricane, they had an environmental disaster, and they're not buying as many flip-flops. Maybe you could also be selling to California or Hawaii, or like I said, Laos, Australia, somewhere else where it's warm during that time of the year. You have that capability because you've already created that stream and that market. So you have to be aware of how the environment is going to affect your sales, but also how it's going to affect how people get your product. For example, if there was a typhoon off the coast of India and people aren't able to, you're not able to ship your products, that would be a consideration that you have to keep in mind. And lastly, but most importantly, is the socio-cultural background. And we're going to delve into this a little bit, but like I said, this is going to be something where you're going to want to do some market research. What are the people in this country I'm trying to enter even interested in? So the way a lot of small businesses actually start going international is I've seen this a lot where someone just reaches out to your shop. Let's say you were an Etsy shop owner and someone from Europe, contacts you and says, I really want to buy your product, but I noticed you don't ship to Europe. Can you do that? And then the small business owner starts thinking, oh, okay, people are interested in my product over there. Maybe I should offer this. That's a great way to start because you got a lead. You got people already reaching out to you saying they were interested, but you should probably do a little bit more research just to see how many people are interested at what price point. I think a lot of people get really overzealous because they have one or two people reach out saying they want you to ship internationally, and that's great. But you still need to do your due diligence because culturally that might be something that not a lot of people are interested in. It might not fit into the social context. And when you're marketing, the social context is huge as well. And I have a case study on that. So like I said, here is some takeaway on those key considerations. You need to determine the international traffic because you want to be able to market correctly and make sure it's worth your time. So not only do you want to say, okay, are there enough people in that country that would be interested in my product at this price point? But you want to know where that traffic is originating from on your website as well. So when we get to the website section, we'll start talking about how to make your website international. A great way to have leads is to look at who's buying on your website, right? So seeing, oh, okay, this person came from the UK, this person came from Italy, this person came from Canada. And you can kind of start to see, is the international traffic worth it for you to build out an entire international channel for these people? You're also going to want to consider the cultural and language differences, like I just said. So culture is huge, language as well. So when you talk about your marketing and your website, are you going to have your website available in different languages? Maybe, maybe not. That would be something for you to determine. Like I said, the economic and political issues within each country or region are just worth considering, especially before you're shipping any kind of product. Looking at whether there's any tariffs or other taxes or fees, and I'll give you a link to where you can find that information. And this is a precursor to our cybersecurity section of the webinar, right? Understanding GDPR, which is a cybersecurity regulation for anyone selling in the European Union. And any other security standards you might just want to be aware of when you're going international. So this is my case study. When looking to expand your business internationally, you're going to be marketing. You're probably going to be on social media because that's one of the most popular places to do marketing. What should you do first? I already put the right answer here for you, just to make this speed up a little bit faster, but I'm going to walk through this really quickly. The second answer here, treat all social media the same, is incorrect. That's incorrect no matter what, by the way. So even if you're only selling stuff in Pennsylvania or only selling stuff in the United States, never treat all social media channels the same. That is a big no-no, which is why we have an entire social media series outlining how you market on each channel specifically. This one at the bottom is wrong, no advertising at all. You never want to be in a position where you're not advertising your product. That's just not correct. So those two are obviously wrong, which means you're left with analyzing the platforms popular in the area and using popular phrases in the area. And a lot of people pick number one. and they go, oh, well, Sarah, you just told us to talk about, you know, popular phrases for the social cultural background. We want to make sure that we're representative of the target market. And you're not wrong, but you need to analyze the platforms first. That is the first step. I'm going to push that home a little bit on that market research, but here's why. You can use all of the popular phrases and memes or whatever it is. You can even have it in the country's native language. You can have the appropriate hashtags, get people's attention. But if you're not on the right platform, it doesn't matter at all. If you're trying to reach people in China, for example, you probably want to have your information available on WeChat or somewhere else that they're utilizing. They can't access Facebook. So don't put all of your information on Facebook when you're trying to reach that target market. You need to be where the clients are first. So analyze the platforms. Who are you trying to reach? Where are they? And then use the phrases that are going to you know, get them. And there are a ton of ways you can go through that process to find this information. Do the research, right? So look at international websites. Look at websites for other companies that are doing things similar to you and how their website looks, especially if you're going into a specific country like Italy, like I said, or like China or something specific. Look at what the websites there look like. How do they have it marketed? What's the phrasing look like? Start trying to get an idea of what your website should probably look like if you're trying to exist in that space. Look for key trends and innovative ideas. This is great because you're going to work on something called unique value. So this is another really popular business term. It's the unique value proposition. This is going to matter whether you're going international or not, but you need to get into this sweet spot right here between what your customers want, what you do well, and what your competition does really well. You need to find that spot in between where you fit perfectly. And another great way, or another great reason to go international, is you can create unique value by being an international business or by bringing something innovative to a country that doesn't have it yet. So let's say you know, have, I don't know, like this brand new awesome t-shirt design program that is just amazing, but everyone else in the United States is already using it. The price of the product has gone down, so it's not as interesting. But people in Italy have never seen this t-shirt design before. It hasn't really picked off there yet, but you've seen, based off of trends or international website traffic on your site or anywhere else, that is going to be really popular over there. That's a new innovative idea in Italy, and you can utilize that as a jumping point for you. So start thinking about what's going on, not just around the world, but what's going on around you and what unique value you're bringing to this space, and do some research on other websites. I know that sounds really basic, but like I said, spend an hour or two looking at what some of the more popular websites look like in that space. And you can try emulating that. And if you're thinking, I need a better starting point than that, Sarah, utilize programs like SBDC Net or IBIS World, or you can go to the US Census Bureau, which only shows you information about the United States, but it still will show you key industry trends, which you can piggyback off of. But SBDC Net, you can Google that, or IBIS World, you can Google that as well. SBDC Net is a free service offered by one of the SBDCs in Texas, where they'll do market research plans for you, and they do international market research plans. So they'll do some research and say, this is what that industry looks like within that country, and here's the potential for you in that space, and they'll provide that to you for free. IBIS World is not free, but if you go to a library, you can utilize it for free at a local library. And IBIS World similarly has a ton of really great information about, like I said, the legal, economic, what's the other one I'm looking for? Political information in a different country. So you can definitely utilize the information on IBIS World in that way as well. So that's where you want to start, with some international marketing and market research design. Before you even go into creating a website, you want to make sure that your product is going to be viable in that space. And you've probably all heard that even when starting your business in general. It's called that feasibility assessment. You know, you want to make sure that your business is actually feasible, that it makes sense in that space, then it makes sense for you. Are you going to get enough money out of this for it to be worth it? So when you've done some initial market research and you think, you know what, I think this is a viable market. I think that if I pay attention to what's going on in that space, politically, legally, environmentally, and I do some social cultural background research, I could start marketing. I could really market this product on social media or elsewhere and gain some traction. Then the next step you're going to need is an international website to actually draw people to. So even if you're marketing, you need to make sure that they have somewhere to actually buy the product or connect with you or whatever it is. So you're going to need an international website. This part is going to be very in-depth. It might be a little more advanced than the stage that some of you are at. That's okay. This is good for you to learn, because then after this, we're going to talk about I'm going to have an outline of the first steps, the first questions you need to answer to get started on this path. But for now, we're going to go over what it means to have an international website. Obviously, if you don't already have a website, even at a national level, that would be a good first step. But when you get to the point where you're trying to draw international traction, you're going to need to diversify your website so it matches. Now, a quick disclaimer here, if you're only selling like 4 or 5 things internationally each year, you probably don't need to build out a whole new international web page for that many people. Like I said, think about that return on investment. It's probably not worth it for you to build out an entire internationally focused website for 4 or 5 orders a year. But if this is something you're going to seriously consider growing, and you're looking specifically at like doubling or tripling the amount of people that you're reaching based on a different country or a different region, then you definitely need to consider these options. The first that we're going to talk about is picking a site segmentation strategy. So what do I mean by that? When you have a website, you know how it says either .com or .org at the end. If you went to Temple's, it's temple.edu because it's a university. But this is your domain. So that kind of tells people what you are. .edu is a school, .org is a free or a nonprofit, .com is normally a company. And when people are trying to reach you from an international website perspective, you can either make it easier or harder for them to find you via site segmentation. What do I mean by that? There's 3 types of ways you can have a domain. You can have a normal .com domain, but if you want people in other countries to find your information specifically tailored to them, you might want to make an international domain. So let's say in America, I'm sarahscupcakes.com. When I go to sell in France, I might want to get a French domain that's actually registered in France so that people in France can log on and automatically see a website that's in French, that has a pay now button, that is in French currency, that's in the EU dollars, the euros, that lists everything in euros, and make it easier for clients to find me in that space, right? If I'm really trying to grow it. Otherwise, they're just going to go to sarahscupcakes.com and it's going to be in English, and maybe they can read it, maybe they can't. And then the dollars amount, they might be confused by, it won't be very clear to them, right? Because the site is tailored for someone in America who's English speaking. So if you want to make a site that is good for your international clientele, you might want an international domain in that space. You might want it to say sarahscupcakes.fr. So that would be a French registered domain. Now, if you're just going into 1 or 2 countries, you can make a different domain for each and have them all have their own separate pages. If you're going to a ton of different countries, then it's going to be a lot of different pages. But I know a lot of small businesses start with maybe a country, a couple countries. And if you really are going to dive in and make it tailored to that country, then you can have a separate domain. But you don't have to. And separate domains do cost money. As you probably know, if anyone has a website already, you have to pay $15 a year for a United States domain. Every other country is going to also have you pay for the international domain in their country. So there are a couple other options. You could have a subdomain. What does this mean? That means your company has, you're not paying for an additional domain, you're paying for a subdomain within the domain you already own. So that makes it a lot easier for people to find you. You don't have to update as many things and have as many web pages. You would just add it within your current website. So instead of it being sarahscupcakes.com or sarahscupcakes.fr, it would say fr.sarahscupcakes.com. So I'm still paying for my one domain, but when people type in it with the subdomain for France, it pulls up the French information that I want them to see. That is easier and slightly cheaper. The last way you can do it is with something called a subfolder. So you can have it say sarahscupcakes.com/fr. So at this point, I have one website, one domain. It's sarahscupcakes.com. And then if any of you have a website, you've probably seen what a subfolder looks like is when you have that backslash and then it brings you to a specific page on your website that's not the home page. So your website might say sarahscupcakes.com/about us, and then it brings you right to the About Us tab on your website, or sarahscupcakes.com/products, and then it brings you right to the products page on a website, right? I mean, that's how a lot of websites are set up right now. If you look at any of, any small business website, you can even look at the Temple SBDC website if you want for, an example. They're all set up that way where it's, temple.com, temple.edu/SBDC/ whatever next, whatever you have next, right? That's how you find these subfolders. So you can do the same thing here. You can have a subfolder for France. sarahscupcakes.com/fr. And when people type in that, it's the same website, it's the same domain, but it's a separate subpage. That is probably the easiest from a small business perspective. But from a client perspective, if they go anywhere off of the one page that's in French, it's going to go back to being an English website tailored for the United States, which is a little more complicated for them. So you can take, the next step on that as you see fit and do a little bit more research. But those are the three ways people are even going to find you. They have to have the right link to get to your website in a way that makes sense for them, in the right currency, in the right language, etc. And then, of course, next would be picking languages. So for any of you that are thinking, just having my one website and having some sub pages makes the most sense for me, you can also set up your website to translate and have different languages available on it. There's a good chance that the business, is already receiving international traffic, but they might not be able to read what's going on your site. You can actually use Google Analytics to see where people start, like where people that are coming to your website are coming from. So we actually have a ton of webinars coming up on Google Analytics if you wanted to sign up for any of those, or you can, they have a ton of really great tutorials. But if you want to know, hey, how many people are clicking on my website and where are they clicking on my website from? That's great from a market research perspective, because then you could say, oh, I see a ton of people clicking on my website from Italy, but no one buying. Okay, so they're interested, but maybe they're getting stuck somewhere. That might be good for you to know, especially if you're not even selling to anyone in Italy right now. So that would be a good reason to use Google Analytics and see what languages people are trying to figure out on your website or where they're coming from. You would do this by navigating to the Geo tab and clicking language. As you can see here, I have some instructions for that. But, depending on where people are coming from, you might want to have options for different languages on your website. Not saying you have to. English is obviously one of the most spoken, but it's very helpful when you're trying to segment, especially if you're going to a country where people are heavily involved in their native language. And then translating the content, right? So you've picked your languages. Now you might want to translate the content on your website, which takes a ton of time and effort. So you can decide how much of the content you want to translate. But like I said, if you're trying to make your website international, whether you're doing an international domain, subdomain, or subfolder for that info for that country and those people, you're going to want to make sure that content is translated correctly for them. You can use paid services like Babblik or SmartLang to translate your website, and they are highly accurate. I'm not trying to say you have to pay for that. You can also utilize a native speaker. But I do want to say beware of free solutions. So if you're thinking you want to try translating the content on your website and making an extra web page that says the exact same thing as your front page, but in French or in Spanish or whatever other language, don't use Google or Bing Translate. They are highly inaccurate. You will confuse people that are native to that tongue. And whether you use a paid service or you find a local friend or you know the language yourself, always have someone double check. Have someone who's a native, has the native tongue translate that and make sure that they understand what's going on your site before you start selling internationally. There's nothing worse than confusing it more by trying to make yourself look more professional and legitimate by translating the content and then doing so incorrectly, because it actually makes you lose legitimacy in that marketplace. So you're going to want to redirect the visitors, right, to the part of the website that makes sense for them. So we just talked about why you would want to put your information either on an international domain or a subdomain. And no matter where you're putting it, it needs to be translated. But how are you going to get people there? So you can have a link element, or you can have things manually. But for example, if you're using that subfolder, people will find that one page, right? Will it automatically be translated? Or do people have to manually have it translated on your website? So what you can do, and you're not required to do this, this takes a little bit more time and effort, but you can add a link element at the beginning of your homepage, for example, and specify the specify the language in your homepage with a link and point to the different language versions on your website. So why is this helpful? Let's say that you were that person with a subfolder. You said, I just have my, my website I made. I want to have this one page that's in French and shows all the product in euros for people in France. That's great. And if they type in sarahscupcakes.fr, then they'll get to that, sarahscupcakes.com/fr, then it'll take them there. That's great. But most people probably aren't going to find your subfolders just by searching for it. They won't know that they exist. Most people are just going to go to sarahscupcakes.com. So when they're on that front page, is there a way for them to figure out how to have that content translated? That's what we're talking about here. So you can have an option on your home page that lists all the different language versions of your website. And then when they click on the one for France, have it take them off to that subfolder that was the French tab of your website, right? But you want to make sure that that's very clear on your home page, that people know that that page exists in their language for them. Otherwise, they might just hop off. They might say, oh, I can't figure it out. I can't find it. So you want to make that really clear up front. You can either have that where it's a link and it links off to the correct page, or you can add a series of manual links, to the proper. So you can either make it automatic, pointing to the different language, or have it be a manual link that they have to click. But either way, the takeaway here is you need to make it really easy for people to find the part of your website that works for them. Making that really obvious on your front page that it is an international website. It does have translation. You can find it here and have it shortcut there. The next thing is submitting to search engines and utilizing search engine optimization. And if you have more questions about search engine optimization, like I've been saying, we have tons of webinars that focus on that specifically, but we're just looking at the big picture international right now. This is obviously going to come into play. It comes into play nationally. It's going to come into play internationally. But at this point, let's say you have a website. It's international enough because it has the translation. It has a way for people to find the translated version. And on your homepage, it makes it really easy for people to either translate the content or click to find the content in the language they want. That already is a win. It makes it easier for people to find you. You've made an international website, maybe not an international e-commerce website yet, but you've made an international website. But people need to find it, especially if you're going into new markets. It's a new market for you, so they don't know you exist yet. So you need to make it really clear for people by submitting yourself to different search engines so that people can find the website. So Google, Bing, and other top engines are going to be important. You can use a program called Stat Counter, which will show you what the top search engines are in each country. And you will get a copy of this PowerPoint. It does have a link to Stat Counter's information. It's free to use, but it'll show you where you want to make sure your website shows up. Does my website show up in Google? Does it show up in Bing? If you're in the United States, it already shows up on Google. But for example, let's say you're trying to reach people in China, and 60% of people in China use Baidu. That's the search engine. They don't have Google, they use Baidu. How do you make sure that your website is on Baidu? So that people can actually find you in that space. So you might want to look into that a little bit more, depending on what market you're going into. And then without going into a whole hour-long session on search engine optimization, just really quickly, SEO is how people can find you. So if people are Googling or utilizing Bing or utilizing Baidu and they're searching international shopping or international, or ship bracelets international, or they're searching for something, right? How does the search engine know to bring up your website? How does it know that you're one of the websites that matches what that person is searching for so they can even find you? That's the whole point of SEO. And you can use words like I just said, like international shopping, international orders accepted, etc. Put them inside your website, put them on each page, because then when people are looking for your information, it's going to make it come up more within those search engines. So once you've made it an international site, say that it's an international site, get it all over the place, make it really obvious, because that's how you're going to get more international orders. And then last, but certainly not least, how do we make it an e-commerce site? So you have a international website, which means people can find you online. And to be honest, people could find your website online either way, right? They could have found it and it just be in all English, but basically you've made it easier for them by translating it, making sure the content makes sense for them. But now you want to make it so that they can actually buy products, right? Even if they searched for you and they found you, which is stellar, the next step is, do they need to buy something? So whether they're buying your consulting services or they're buying a product that has to be shipped, you need to make sure that the money and payment providers work with your website and match the international clients you're trying to find. That's the word I have down here, and we have a little link as well that you can reference for additional information. The adding a money and a payment provider is just that one extra step, right? It makes it a little bit more complex to figure out. The good news is there are a ton of payment providers like PayPal and American Express that automatically do international transactions and can help you translate the currency. But not all payment providers do that. And not all payment providers are accepted in other countries. So if you're not, do your research before you have a payment provider linked to your website, to make sure that it's really clear that this is a payment provider that's going to work internationally. Are they going to take international currency? So that's just a note on that, and we'll touch on it a little bit more in a second. Because here are some things that you're going to want to consider really closely. Regulations are huge. Here are some information on this link, brings you to information on free trade agreements that currently exist. But duties, taxes, and customs are also key factors to consider. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because it's going to be different for every country. I know people hate to hear that because they're looking for a webinar to get specific advice, but international is not specific. There's so many countries. There's hundreds of countries, and each one is going to have different duties and tax requirements and different customs requirements. So you need to do the due diligence, but I don't want you to forget that those exist if you're shipping a product. And then lastly, are you shipping a product? Because if you are, you need to be really clear about how you're shipping. You need to set clear expectations and return policies on your website. So if you're going to sell a product, you want to have very clearly identified when people buy the product on the website page, in the receipt that they get, any requirements for a refund or a time limit for when they can return items. Do they have to pay to ship it back to you internationally? Yes, no. That needs to be clear. You need to make that call for yourself, but you can't leave that up to ambiguity, especially internationally. It'll get really sticky really quickly and it can cost a lot of money. So make sure those expectations are clear from the beginning. And then of course, you probably wonder, well, how do I get my products shipped? Like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a slide or two, but you can utilize UPS. You can utilize other third-party logistics like Amazon, or you might have a partnership with someone yourself that you're shipping items through. But this is just the beginning. So when you're on your website, you're making your website, you want really clear for the consumer what the expectation is in terms of shipping. You do not want to leave that up to them to determine, because it's probably not going to be in your best interest. All right. I'm going to move really quickly through cybersecurity here so I can give you those tangible next steps. If anyone has a question, please do put it in the chat. I think we have a bit of a quiet group here today. Maybe I'm just inundating you with information. But if you have a question, put it in the chat. I'm going to keep barreling through cybersecurity, and then we'll take, a second for questions there as well. So even if you're just a national business, cybersecurity is important. If you're selling anything online, if you're taking payment online, you need to worry about cybersecurity. Once again, this is a topic that could be a session all in itself. Cybersecurity 101 is huge. We do it once a quarter. If you're interested, please do sign up for the next one coming up. But here's just the brief overview, right? When we talk about cybersecurity, it's not just keeping client information safe. That is data security. Making sure that the data you're taking is not stolen, that you're keeping track of your employee records, transactions, inventory payments. That all has to be secure. You don't want people to steal it or hack your website or anything. But we're also talking about software security. So is the software you're using secure? Is the web platform that you're on easily hacked by international consumers? Is the payment provider easily hacked? Those are things you're going to want to think about. So any kind of software that gets involved in utilizing your business nationally or internationally is going to come into play here. Network security and compliance. So compliance is going to come into play in a second when I talk about GDPR. And then network security is something that's going to be important when you're going international, right? How secure is the network you're on? When you're going international, people from all over the world will be accessing you from different networks. Some of them might be more secure than others. So does your network at least have the firewall security to take care of if some random spyware from, the middle of Asia, is on your site all of a sudden? So you want to make sure that you have the cybersecurity awareness and that any website paying software, anything that you have is secure enough. And we have whole sessions on this. Like I said, if you want to find out more information in detail, we're actually running an entire program. Oh, I thought I had a slide on that. I do in 2 slides, but we do have an entire program where we pair small businesses with students who are getting their masters in cybersecurity to do a test of your website, and they can help make it more secure, which would be a huge win, especially before you go international. A really quick note on GDPR: if you're going to sell in the European Union, you need to know what GDPR is. It's a legal framework that basically defines what data you can actually collect on people and who has access to that data. They're trying to keep things much more transparent for small businesses. So you have to be really clear with what kind of security information you can require. This also affects how you can market. So they don't let you market specifically to people using data analytics, right? You can't do, you can't buy people's information to market to them in the European Union. They make it really clear. So on the right here, I just have some ideas of what you might want to consider in terms of, your data policies to make sure you're in line with GDPR, but you might want to do some due diligence research on this. And to be honest, the rest of the United States is probably going to follow suit very soon. So this is something that you should probably learn about in the near future anyway. For example, if you're selling to California, they don't call it GDPR, but they have something almost exactly similar. So if you're selling to clients who are located in California, you have to follow these policies as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if, the rest of the country follows in the coming years. So it's just something to consider. This is a quick, handy graphic saying, how does GDPR impact me as a small business? You can read this more in detail to figure out what it means in terms of your permissions, your processes, your technology, and all of that. And like I said, we have business projects that you can apply to. You can apply using this link here, bit.ly, /digitalconnect. If you are looking for assistance, making sure your website is cyber secure, please do apply. We're running this through the summer, through the fall. It's a great opportunity. All right, now what? I'm going to spend the last couple of minutes here just giving you a now what after all that info, right? So you were like, okay, she gave me some good ideas for how to make my marketing more specific, how to make my website more tailored to whatever market I'm trying to find. And I have to keep cybersecurity in mind. But now what does that mean for me if I wanted the next step? I'm going to pause for 1 second and let, if anyone has a question, now would be the time. All right, great. So this might sound funny, but do you have a website? If not, step 1 is make a website. I never want to assume that the people on the webinars are or are not at a certain stage in their business. We have people on our webinars that have not started at all. We have people who have been on for 10, 20 plus years. So if you are one of those people who are thinking about international, but have not made a website at all yet for your business, period, you're going to need a website to make international e-commerce work for you. Over here, I have a WordPress for Beginners course that we're actually running. I know that last session was yesterday. I left it here because we're actually running this session again in June and July and August. So if you're thinking my first step is I need to make a website, we're doing a ton of WordPress for Beginner webinars throughout the rest of the summer. So that might be a great place to start. But let's say you have a website. What should you do? First step, before you even try translating your content, before you decide subdomain, subfolder, what does that even mean? You need to make sure that you have the logistics figured out for actually getting your product international. The first would be how to make that website an e-commerce website that works for you. You need to check your payment provider. You need to figure out will the payment provider I'm using that takes client information over the website work internationally? If it doesn't, you need to get a different payment provider before you even start marketing or anything else, like I said. So PayPal, Square, Visa, and many other payment processors let you know where they accept payments. Different platforms accept different methods. So you should do your research. You can give them a call. You can look on their website, especially these big wigs like PayPal and Square and Visa, like I said, American Express. They make it really obvious, you know, what they offer and what they don't offer. But you can always follow up with them and ask. That's really key. Because the worst thing you can do is, you know, market yourself international and people say, wait, I can't pay, or I can't pay in my currency, it's not accepting it. So you want to make sure that they assist with that international payment processing. Normally that's built in for some of these bigger ones. Maybe they might charge a small additional fee to offer that, but you want to make sure that that's really clear up front. What you might want to do is research local buyers' preferred methods of payment. So that's going to vary significantly by country. But many people prefer buying in their local currency versus buying in US dollars or euros or anything else, like I said, right? So you might want to offer, like I said, your website showing the prices in different currencies. And you're going to want to make sure that your payment provider has that currency conversion. So there's two steps here. One, does your payment provider even accept payment in that other country? So does my PayPal allow me to have someone from Italy buy from me? That's the first step. And two, will PayPal convert the currency to euros for my client, or will it be in US dollars still? That's the second one. So you want to make sure it does both, that it does show the currency conversions, that clients aren't surprised when they see the price. So that would be the first step, 100%. You are probably already utilizing e-commerce if you're trying to go international with e-commerce. So double check whatever payment provider you're using. Next would be pre-calculate your shipping costs. Shipping costs can be really, really expensive. So what you need to do is take a look at what it looks like on average, do some math, go to USPS, go to UPS, whatever third-party provider you're working with, and do some basic math, like do some tests to see how much does it cost to send this? How much does it cost to send this? Before you start selling, you want to make sure you have an idea of what the shipping looks like. This includes international shipping fees, warehousing, any other stuff. One of the things that you want to do that for is one, so that you can put accurate prices on your website for people and it's not a guess. The worst thing you can have is someone wants to buy a $20 product off your website in Italy, and you say that it's $5 shipping, but then you go to UPS and it's actually $22 shipping, and then you have to go to the client and say, I'm sorry, but it's $22 shipping, and you might lose that sale. I mean, that's not very professional, and clients normally don't react very receptively to that. So pre-calculate what you think your shipping costs are going to be to go to different countries on average, and you can put that on your website. You can also build it into the cost. So one thing I'm sure most of you already know in Marketing 101 is customers are very receptive to free shipping. It excites people a lot. You can offer a higher price for your product if it includes free shipping. So consider that when you're building your website, regardless of whether it's international. But certainly make sure that you're showing the flat rate options, the expedited options, whatever it is. Down here at the bottom, I have a little asterisk that said, look at some Canadian websites, especially if you're just going to Canada or Mexico or something like that. Look at what the pricing looks like on a Canadian website, because that's probably what you're going to experience, you know, going the other way as well. Optimize your online store. So this is what we were talking about, right? You need to make sure that it's easy for people to find your information. You want to tailor it for each country you're going into, maybe have it translated for them, show the product in the right currency. You can use a multi-language translator tool or a landing page if making all these other random pages seems a little too complicated, but you get to make that call yourself. And make sure that, you know, you provide international customers a page that's in their language with the featured products available in their area. So for example, if you only ship 5 of your 10 products across the country, you're not willing to send the other 5 internationally for whatever reason, you need to make that really clear up front. But that's the best way to optimize your store, really. If you're trying to go international, you want to fit in and make it easier for the consumer. And then lastly, get a third-party fulfillment partner if you don't already. Like I said, Amazon, Alibaba, USPS is only in America, but UPS, FedEx, take a look at what's going on out there and how they can help you fulfill with your fulfillment. So this is if you're a product-based business, right? If you're a service-based business, then you just need people to pay online and they get your service, But if you're shipping something, this is by far the most complicated part of an international business. It's not getting the website up, it's not getting the point of sale, it's not even getting the payment. If you are selling a product, this is the most complicated part, is making sure the product actually gets there. So I always recommend using a third-party logistics provider, making sure that they have some kind of insurance in it so that if the product gets lost, is the third-party provider paying for that? Or are you required to pay for that? Because international is a lot farther to go than down the street when you're shipping. So these are just some examples. Like I said, Amazon, Alibaba, UPS. Start taking a look at what they offer for you, FedEx. And you can decide, get different perspectives from each, what they offer, what they don't, and see what works best for you. And create a relationship with them. I would just pick one. If one works for you, have everything go through one payment provider, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. So those are the first 4 steps that I would take. If you have a website already and you want to go international, take those 4 steps to kind of get you in the groove for preparation to take online orders. Here are some other resources that I think are really, really helpful. I'm just going to go through them really quickly because I know we're a couple minutes over time here. But take a look at the STEP program. This is a program offered by the Pennsylvania government. If you're trying to get international, you can get reimbursed up to 75% of eligible expenses, up to 10 grand. So they'll pay like $7,500 of your expenses. And you only have to pay $2,500 of your expenses. In terms of compliance testing, they'll test, if you want to pay to have people test your website to make sure it works internationally, making your website internationalized, so translating it, monitoring it, getting this SEO together, and e-commerce fees, market listing fees, digital marketing, etc. The STEP program, you can apply to that if you're interested, and they will help you. They will literally reimburse 75% of your expenses in that space to help you get online. Someone in one of the previous sessions asked if this is for product-based businesses only, and I'm pretty sure it is. So if you're just a service-based business and you're having people buy internationally to get, counseling from you, or like just sending a graphic design image or something in, that doesn't require shipping, I don't think you're eligible, but you can always go online and talk to a STEP expert yourself. But I think this is so valuable and not enough people know it exists. So this could be a great next step for some of you. And then, like I said, we have our friends at the U.S. Commercial Services. They're also located in Philadelphia. They have a ton of different things they can help you with when you're trying to get online. They can do a gap analysis report, which will show you what your e-commerce sales channel is missing in order to make it more efficient at getting international sales. Like I said, they give you best practices. They go over your SEO. And depending on how large your business is, I think my computer might have just crashed a little bit there. So I'm just going to go back to the screen share. I don't know why I just dropped it, but take a look at what they have. All I was saying is it is a small fee for that. And they have a ton of other resources. So you can learn about how to obtain financing, how to negotiate an export sale, how to find a logistics provider, how to comply with US exporting regulations. These are some of the things we touched on today, right? Go on their website because they have a ton of resources that will help you walk through what it means for you in terms of each of those key aspects. And then lastly, but certainly not least, also utilize the Temple SBDC. We're here for you. I put a list of our upcoming trainings here that might just be of interest to some of you. Like I said, the first step of international e-commerce is having an e-commerce website. So we have a ton of webinars coming up on how to get a website. Or use a third-party provider like Amazon or Etsy. In 2 weeks, we're doing an Etsy series. So if you're thinking, I want to go international via Etsy, figure out how to get on Etsy. And then just a couple other considerations that might be of interest to all of you on the call here today. This is another plug. We're doing a manufacturing series. And some of you might be saying, you know what, I'm not a manufacturer, Sarah. I don't think this makes sense for me. But the concepts are applicable no matter what business you're in. So for example, coming up in June, we have Going Global with e-commerce, how to use Amazon to go international, how to use Alibaba to go international. I encourage you to sign up for those if you think they're of interest to you, because they will relate to you whether or not you're manufacturing. And also, manufacturing doesn't just mean the people in the giant metal shop. If you're making a product if you are literally producing a product, then you're manufacturing it yourself, whether that's a cookie or a piece of clothing or a craft, you know, that you're manufacturing that product as well. So it still applies. And then this just is our last page on how to contact us. And if anyone has any additional questions, you can always send us a message. So I'm going to close it up there. I'm going to stop my screen share so you can all see me. If anyone has any questions, please do let me know. I'm about to put our survey in the chat here. So anyone that's been to our sessions before knows that we put a 4-question survey at the end of each session, just so you can let us know how we did, what you liked, what you didn't like, and I would highly appreciate your feedback. So I'll put that in the chat now, and you can let me know if you have any questions. Great, glad you enjoyed it, Dana. I know that's a lot of information, and I even went over 5 or 6 minutes here because it is a lot, and I'm a little long-winded, but you will all get a copy of the PowerPoint after the session. You'll also get a copy of the recording if you want to rewatch it. If there's anything you have any questions about, you can always let us know. All right, I'm going to stay online to see if anyone had a question. If not, you're more than welcome to hop off. Like I said, I put the survey link in the chat, so please do fill that out if you have the chance. I would love to know what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you'd like going forward. Great.
Thank you.
Not a problem. For any of you that are interested, starting in October, I'm working with one of our other international experts, and we're going to be doing an entire 12-part series. It's going to be very robust. This was really like an intro to e-commerce, you know, giving you a feel for all the things you need to figure out internationally. The sessions we're going to be starting in October go in depth, like a full hour on importing, a full hour on exporting, a full hour on social cultural behavior, and a full hour on international negotiations and all of that. So if any of you are really highly interested in this space, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter or get in touch with any of us at the SBDC, because we're just going to continue to ramp up the international programming. All right, quiet group. Got the last of you in here. So I'm going to go ahead and